Hi everybody, welcome to our lesson where we're going to be working with more rational numbers, but specifically we're going to be starting to work with operations with rational numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look at our focus for today's lesson. Our focus for today is to add and subtract fractions in mixed numbers and to solve problems involving rational numbers. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to answer these two questions. Let's take a look at what they are. How do you add or subtract fractions with different denominators? And how do you add or subtract mixed numbers? So let's go ahead and review some vocabulary that's going to be very important to us throughout the lesson. As a review, let's start by talking about the least common multiple. The least common multiple is the value that is the smallest that is in common with two values. So say we have to find the multiples of 5 and 15. We would then list out all the multiples to find the smallest multiple that's in common with both numbers. So in this case we have 5, 10, 15. I can stop there because I know that the least common multiple of these values would be 15. That same concept directly correlates with the least common denominator. The least common denominator really is the LCM of a denominator. So let's use the values that we have in that first example for the least common multiple. Say we have 1/5 plus 2/15. What we would need to do is find the least common denominator of both values. We did it up here, but instead we're applying it to a rational number or fraction. And we need to make sure that we're using the mathematical terminology of numerator and denominator. In a fraction, the top value is the numerator and the bottom value is the denominator. A lot of the times in math, I used to always wonder when I was in school, why am I learning this? When am I ever going to use it? So I wanted to make sure that I let you know why you're learning this and provide you an example. So I have done some renovations over the past couple years, and I would be absolutely lost if I didn't have a strong understanding and the ability to add and subtract fractions. So understanding how to add and subtract fractions really allowed me to make accurate measurements. I would be cutting boards around my bathroom, and if I got the measurements wrong, they were wrong, and I probably could have wasted wood, and then I would waste money. So making sure that you are accurate with your fractions and being able to add and subtract them is going to really help you in the long run, if that's something that you think that you might be interested in the future. Also, I want to share with you a very important note. So take a moment. Are you ready? I'm not sure you are. Let's take a look. This is a reminder. To add and subtract fractions, you must have a common denominator. There's no way around it. You have to have a common denominator in order to add or subtract fractions. So let's take a look at an example together. Here we have a fraction 2/15 is being subtracted by 1/10. Our first step is to solve for the least common denominator, which in reality we need to find the least common multiple of 15 and 10. So let's go ahead and list out our multiples of 15 and 10. Here we have 15. Multiplied by 1 is 15. Multiplied by 2 is 30. Multiplied by 3 is 45. But let's go ahead and stop there and see if we can't find a multiple of 10 that will match any of the multiples provided thus far. So we have 10 times 1, which is equal to 10. 10 times 2, which is 20. 10 times 3 is 30. So here I am able to identify that the least common multiple of 15 and 10 is 30. So the LCM equals 30. Now what I need to do is write an equivalent fraction for each of the ones provided. In order to do so, we're going to have 2/15. We need to write an equivalent fraction so that the denominator equals 30. And we already have identified over here that we're going to multiply by 2. We're going to multiply 15 times 2 to equal 30. And what we do to our denominator, we must do to our numerator. 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have an equivalent fraction to 2/15. Now I need to do the same for 1/10. Here I have 1/10, and I need to write an equivalent fraction so that the denominator is 30. So I can subtract those fractions. And I have up here that I need to multiply 10 by 3 to equal 30. And what we do to our denominator, we do to our numerator. 1 times 3 is 3. Now I'm just going to rewrite it in the order. The equivalent fraction of 2/15 is 4/30. So I'm going to write that over here. And our operation is subtraction. I'm going to subtract 3/30. Our denominator stays the same. So we have 30, and 4 minus 3 equals 1. So 2/15 minus 1/10 is equal to 1/30. Let's take a look at a much more challenging example. The first thing that we're going to have to do in this example is change our mixed numbers into improper fractions. In order to do that, let's start by multiplying our denominator by our numerator, and then we add, our denominator by our whole number, we multiply that, and then we add our numerator. The denominator always stays the same. So we have 24 times 1, which is 24. And 24 plus 18 equals 43. So we took a mixed number and changed it into an improper fraction. We also need to do the same for this mixed number. We have 20 times 2, which is 40, plus 23, which is 63. So we have 63/20. Now what we need to do is find the least common multiple of both 24 and 20. So we're solving for the least common denominator. What value is in common with both 20 and 24 that's the smallest? So let's list out the multiples of 24 and 20. 24 times 1 is 24. Times 2 is 48. Times 3 is 72. Times 4 is 96. Times 5 is 120. We're going to stop there. Now we're going to list the multiples of 20. We have 20. 20 times 2 is 40. Plus another 20 is 60. 80. 100. And we have 120. And only 2 values are in common so far. And this is the smallest, which is 120. So our least common multiple, or in this case, our least common denominator, will be 120. So now we need to write equivalent fractions for both of these values. We have 43/24. We're going to multiply that fraction by whatever value we need in order for the new denominator to equal 120. So 24 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equaled 120. And what we do to our denominator, we also do to our numerator. So we're going to multiply 43 times 5, which equals 215. We're going to do that same thing to our fraction 63/20. And we need to multiply that by a number so that we have an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 120. So let's see what value times 20 equals 120. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 20 equals 120. And what we do to our denominator, we do to our numerator. 63 times 6 equals 378. Now we're left to add these two improper fractions because that is the operation we're working with. So we have 215 over 120 plus 378 over 120. Our denominator stays the same. Now we just need to add our numerators across. 215 plus 378 is equal to 593. Now it's our job to figure out how to change this improper fraction back into a mixed number. So we can figure out how many times does 120 go into 593 without going over, which is 4 times. We can solve that 120 times 4 is equal to 480. We can take that amount away from our numerator. So we have 593 minus 480 to figure out what our numerator is. And there, we have used addition with mixed numbers to figure out what the sum of 1/19 over 24 plus 2 and 23 over 20 would be. 4 and 113 over 120. That problem is no small feat. So that was a lot for one lesson. So let's take a moment to review to see if we can answer these questions. How do you add or subtract fractions with different denominators? And how do you add or subtract mixed numbers? Well, to add or subtract fractions with different denominators, we need to make sure, as that reminder I shared with you at the beginning of the lesson, that we must have a common denominator. So you would be solving for the least common denominator. And if for some reason you would solve that your answer is an improper fraction, you would then change it to a mixed number. And then we have the question, how do you add or subtract mixed numbers? Well, let's go back to this example. We changed our mixed numbers into improper fractions. And then we solved for the least common denominator, added up our numerators, and then changed our improper fraction back into a mixed number. If you have any questions regarding this lesson on adding and subtracting rational numbers, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys in class. Bye!